I'm ready to go.
All right.
Cool.
Awesome. Perfect. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure to be here, Jenny. Thank you so much.
So first, let's talk about your background. What were you doing before Charity Charge, and what triggered your career change?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Look, in the really micro perspective, had recently moved to Austin, moved there when I was 23, and I started working for a group called the Austin Technology Incubator, which is a part of University of Texas. And I was working hands-on consulting and doing a lot of market research for early stage technology companies. And I was just around all these entrepreneurs and was just seeing all the amazing things that they were doing and hear about kind of their visions for their companies and the reason that they were doing them, how they wanted to kind of build a career, by bringing innovative things to life. And I got really inspired to do something entrepreneurially myself. I think in kind of the macro point as well, coming out of college, unfortunately my father passed away when I was 19, and it certainly left a mark on me of, how am I going to make a difference in this world? And, made me really kind of really reflect early on at a young age that, I wanted to make meaning out of my career. But I was still, in my early 20s, in Austin, just trying to figure it out and just around a lot of entrepreneurs.
Okay, and so what triggered actually deciding, okay, so I want to do my own company and I wanted to have meaning, to starting your own credit card? What was that moment? And I think when we chatted before, you kind of talked about how you had this frustrating experience of trying to book award travel with your credit card points.
Yeah, I think that's a great frame point, and I can just go straight into it. Apologies for the preamble before there. So at any rate, I was, the real way I came up with the idea for Charity Charge, I had signed up for a credit card, and I remembered, when I signed up for it, there were all these, now looking back on it, kind of illusions of grandeur of, get this credit card, and you're going to get all these perks and benefits and bonus points, and it's going to change your life. So I was using this card throughout the year, and it was December, and I, one night thought to myself, geez, I probably accumulated a lot of points. Let me log into the bank's rewards catalog and see what I'm going to pick out for myself. What am I going to get? And I did that, and I was scrolling through, and I had this really aggravating experience because, at first I thought, well, let me get some flights, and then the flights I wanted had blackout dates, so I couldn't use the points for that. And then, I'm scrolling through and I'm thinking, do I want a Red Lobster gift card or an Olive Garden gift card? Or, and I got even more frustrated. And then, I'm toggling in the section where they're offering me, things such as Samsonite briefcases or binoculars and toaster ovens. And I just had this moment, about like 45 minutes into this of agonizing over what to pick out, that I just didn't need more stuff, and that's...
Right.
That's like, after using this card for an entire year, all I was going to get is a toaster oven or a Red Lobster gift card. No disrespect to Red Lobster there, but so I logged off, and fortune has it, the next thing I did, I was checking my email, and at the top of my inbox was a note from a nonprofit in Austin called Hill Country Conservancy, a group that does a lot of environmental preservation work in the Austin area. And I had been supporting them throughout that year, just in a normal way that a donor would support through writing a check and giving general donations that way. And that's when I got the epiphany where, a moment ago I was frustrated because I had been using a credit card. There was nothing that I wanted in those reward points. And yet here was a nonprofit that I really cared about their mission I wanted to support. And I just thought to myself, what if instead of getting stuff for myself, I could benefit the organization that I really cared about just through my everyday purchases. And, we've all seen the success of companies like Tom's and Warby Parker that, it's on that product level where by this product, you're able to give back and make a difference. I thought, why not be able to take that up to the next level so that everything you buy makes a difference. And I think, I'll get to a point here, the final point here, but it's only that I realize it now years later after having that experience. I think what it truly, was triggering in me is that, my parents always raised me, with a couple of really core, foundational principles. And, one of those was, I think one that maybe I had forgotten for a moment, which was, giving is better than receiving. And, now I really think about kind of the mission and what we're doing with Charity Charge is really giving people an opportunity to have an easy way to give back. And, if we're so lucky, like this morning, I bought a cup of coffee. Well, I used my Charity Charge card and I benefited the nonprofits I cared about. If I'm fortunate enough that I can afford that cup of coffee, why not help someone else that's less fortunate in the process, just as a simple byproduct?
And you make it super easy, and we'll get into that in a moment, but I'm curious first, how did your idea of, well, I should start a credit card where every purchase I make, there's some money given to a charity of my choice, to actually bringing that to fruition? Because I think if somebody said I started my own credit card, I would just shake my head. How did you start your own credit card? You're not MasterCard, you're not Visa. So kind of take me through that process quickly of how you went from, I'm going to start my own credit card, to actually having a credit card to sell people.
Sure. Look, there's a lot of twists and turns, but I think the best way that I can kind of answer it in the most practical level for anyone that wants to start, a credit card company, or, is just kind of in the building blocks and early phases of getting their idea off the ground. The good kind of thing that I really learned when I worked at the Austin Technology Incubator was that to really look at what other people are doing in the space that might be a complementary business model. So although I had this idea for a credit card that you would use, and instead of you getting, bonus points or airline miles, you could donate it. What I quickly realized is, look, this already exists in many respects, in the sense of there's a Southwest card where you use that and you get reward points, or there's, a Nordstrom's card, or any of these brands. So I started looking at it, and I realized that there's a business model called co-brand credit card. And with that, you can essentially partner with a payment network like MasterCard and Visa, and also partner with an issuing bank, whether it's Commerce Bank or Chase Bank or Capital One. So I really looked to see what was going on in the market that was, at least from a business model perspective, tangentially related to what I wanted to do. And that helped, kind of that. I think you had him on as a guest, that Tony Robbins, one of his great lines that came from one of his mentors, Jim Rohn, of success leaves clues. I just tried to peel back the onion a little bit, and I noticed what was going on in the space, started reaching out to consultants, and kind of let it unfold through those means.
And so you were looking now for these opportunities. What connections did you have? Who was working in this space that you could reach out to? Who could put you in touch with the right person? And eventually you got to the right person, and you had then your business plan. So how did you kind of convince MasterCard this was going to be a profitable card for them? This was going to be worthwhile. Did you say this is going to be kind of a socially good card for them? Or did you do some research as to people who really wanted to give back and were looking for opportunities and would pick a card like this? I mean, how did you kind of convince them that this would be a worthwhile investment on their part?
I think I'll answer that question. I think that it's kind of baked into what your question is, because I originally, was trying to pitch this very much, and I would give this advice to anyone that's, starting anything kind of socially conscious or socially minded venture. Really focus on the economics and how it's going to fit in and bring real dollar value to the people that you want to partner with. Because I think early on I focused too hard when I was trying to reach out to get banks and payment networks on board about all the social benefits, which is obviously why, I'm doing the business. But I was able to kind of figure out what MasterCard would want to see and how they're going to make money off of this, and also our bank partner, to really present a case where, it would be profitable for them. I think, again, thinking about the corollaries, what they're used to is that what's existed for decades now, quite frankly, are these affinity credit cards where a really large nonprofit, so say like, for example, Bank of America and Visa have a credit card with Susan G. Komen, and it's branded specifically for Susan G. Komen. It's only for Susan G. Komen supporters, and when they use that card, a very small amount goes back to Susan G. Komen. Our model brings a lot more value to the nonprofits and the cardholders, and is very distinct. But again, peel all of that away, I recognize that there's an interest of banks to, work and focus on people that are doing nothing with their reward points, which is over 60 million, people in the United States. And I really just pitched it as look, there's these existing affinity cards out there. Here's how my model's similar. Here's how it's different. And, here's how it's going to be a profitable, item for you. I will say, like, one of the funny things, and I can kind of say it now, but, and once you get far enough down the path, if you're looking to start, a co-brand credit card, the issuer and the payment network are going to ask for projections. They're going to want to see you put together a financial model that really shows, how you're going to grow the program and how it's going to be get bigger and over time as the years ensues from like a payment volume perspective. And when we were initially putting it together, I had to make a lot of assumptions. My first time through it, we obviously weren't in market yet, so weren't sure what to pick. I just remember submitting the model to the main guy I was working with at MasterCard at the time, getting on the phone with him, and him saying to me, Steven, hey, look, we believe in what you're trying to do from a conceptual basis. We believe it's going to work, and we're on board. Like, we're going to make you an offer. But he goes, but the projections you sent me, he goes, they were so large. He said this would be the most successful credit card that's ever launched in the history of the world. And he goes, look, I had to cut your numbers to like a tenth of the size, and I submitted it, to finance to get it approved. And
you were optimistic.
I was very optimistic, but I was also, you can call it naive or uneducated or whatever. It was just my first time through, and I really, kind of swung for the fences, painting, I guess, a little too bright of a picture. But it was pretty funny moment.
Well, you need to have that belief, I guess, if you are going to make it happen. So that's my next question. How do you get people to sign up for this card? So you had these projections that everybody in the world was going to want a chance to have charity charge in their wallet. Of course, it's not that easy. You have to convince people, A, to get a new credit card. You have to convince them, B, to get a credit card that's not necessarily putting, rewards in their pocket. You have to convince people, C, that this is a card that they're going to use, not lose track of, not rack up a lot of interest on. So what were some of the what steps did you take once you got this card launched to actually let people know it existed and convince them to sign up?
Yeah, sure. So, again, on a really practical level, for any entrepreneurs that are listening to this, I think it comes down to two things. Really basically, one is the distribution, like how are we going to get awareness and traffic and people to come to our website? And then when they get there, or we're in front of them with this opportunity, how are we making sure that we're messaging it the right way so that they actually convert and decide to get the card? And so on that first point on distribution, we've really found a couple of channels that are really starting to scale up and work well for us. One is partnering with, traditional credit card affiliate sites like a creditcards.com, where, their whole business model is to put out a lot of, different things, whether it's content, SEO, advertising, etc. People come on creditcards.com and are looking for a right card, and we're a different option there, right? So while they are featuring all these cashback and bonus points card, for the 30% of people that aren't using their reward points and are looking for something different or just want to add another product that has no annual fee, they see charity charge, and that brings the distribution to our site. From there, what we've really focused on has been, to be frank, kind of the hardest thing is how do we pitch it and present it the right way? And that's really a matter of, letting people know that there's no annual fee, letting people know that, there's a lot of misinformation about personal finance, of course, letting them know that in reality it's likely going to improve their credit score, not hurt it, letting them know that we have lower than the national average APR. And I think on the other distribution piece, the other thing that's been good for us is doing partnerships direct with nonprofits. So, even last week we kicked off a partnership with a couple of new nonprofits. One of them is Broward Children's Center, for example, down in Florida, where they're now putting charity charge in front of their board, staff, donor base, letting them know that they could just sign up off of a Broward Children's Center fundraising page. They'll get a card in the mail tagged to support them. So really distribution through those tried and true affiliates, and then working with the nonprofits hand in hand themselves.
So you've basically been going to the nonprofits, so they send it out to their big groups and their lists of people that they have, and they're pitching it first and foremost to the people who are already supporting them in some capacity.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. And then what about to convince the general public? Do you for instance, let's say Hurricane Harvey hits, is that a time when you guys kind of put out a PR pitch or go speak at different events to donate and that it can help the Red Cross, or, kind of any trending topic that seems to be out there where there's an opportunity to a little bit capitalize on that and say, hey, this is an opportunity if you want to give back without having to worry about finding something at the last minute, but add to the coffers of these nonprofits year round, this is an option. Do you guys do that? Do you have that kind of strategy also in place?
I mean, the brief answer is we don't have a super proactive strategy in place for that, just because, the reality of the day-to-day of growing this business, we haven't had the resources to put there. But I will tell you that, for example, when Hurricane Harvey struck, the fortunate thing was, writers from creditcards.com and some other news outlets actually reached out to us and then, kind of brought that to their audience. I do think that there's a real strategy of being more, forward thinking of proactive, because unfortunately, tragedies are happening in the world we live in, all the time. And I think that, this is an opportunity to do something positive and kind of get in the news media when those opportunities happen. I think that, I always want to be real, obviously if I'm getting interviewed or on a podcast, just yesterday someone hit me with a great idea, and essentially my response was, this is a great idea, but I don't have the resources to be totally focused on that yet. But I think where you're headed is the right way from a strategy perspective. I know, you and I have talked offline a little bit about that, and I appreciate all those ideas. I think that really getting at the core of, giving people an easy way to give back and have them feel like they're doing their part, even if it's just filling up their, buying gas for their car or buying dinner or drinks out with friends, they can help out.
Well, absolutely. And I know that when Hurricane Harvey hit, there was a lot of stories about how the Red Cross and other charities their sites shut down. They had this influx of money coming in from the government and from people and stuff, and they actually couldn't handle kind of the intensity of all of the online submissions and stuff. And so again, that's a really good opportunity for people who want to just give back, not necessarily there's a crisis, but just kind of helping add to their ability, these nonprofits, to help people in times of need year round. So first, take us through the process. Somebody signs up for this credit card, they get it in the mail. Then what? How do they start helping these charities and choosing their charity? And do you guys help them choose? What's kind of the process there?
Sure. So when you actually apply for your card, you select the nonprofit that you want to support. And we work in partnership with a group called GuideStar. That's the #1 database of nonprofit information in the world. So therefore, in our system, you can search and find literally any nonprofit in the United States, including K through 12 schools. So there's something over, 2 million nonprofits you can search from. So we've got cardholders now, fortunately, all across the country that are supporting everything from their local children's school or animal shelter, all the way up to supporting, big national groups. Just as you mentioned, we've got a lot of people supporting American Red Cross, United Way Worldwide, and many other the big groups as well. The beauty of our model, though, is when you get your card in the mail, you had already pre-selected your nonprofit. So all you have to do is activate it just like any other credit card by calling the 800 number. And then you can go and use it around the world, wherever MasterCard is accepted. Every time you make a purchase, the cash back that you're earning, that's 1% on every purchase, automatically gets sent to the nonprofit that you had pre-selected. So it's really, truly a easy, effortless way for people to be able to give back. However, to your point, if at any point in time as a cardholder, you want to check and see how much you've earned, or you want to select additional nonprofits to support, you can log into what we call the donation dashboard. And from there, you can see how much you've earned. You can get a detailed itemized tax receipt and also have the option to pick additional nonprofits. But, the majority of people, it's really interesting, Jenny, when I created this, you have a lot of assumptions and you kind of put something out there in the world, and then reality comes in, how people interact with it. I would say about 95% of people apply for the card and keep that nonprofit, so to speak, on file with their card. Because, what I consistently hear from cardholders that really like the product and use it is that they just like that it's easy, that it's effortless, that they don't even have to think about it, and they know that they're doing good.
Right. They don't have to redeem those rewards or get the check and send it to the nonprofits. It's just done, period, for them. And I think that is a great thing, because as you said, 30% of cardholders or something do not actually redeem their rewards. simply because sometimes it's just too difficult and they don't want to bother with it. So what is a typical charity charge cardholder like? I mean, what age group are they? Is it mainly men or women? What's the demographic profile of the people who tend to be the most interested?
Sure. Look, I would say at this point, we have a pretty even mix of male versus female. I think we're skewing a little bit more female, so power to you and everyone, out there. I think that, generally speaking, we're seeing a lot of people that are board members or heavily involved as a staff member of a nonprofit, looking for additional ways just to help out. Almost the common thing we get from people that are board members are, why wouldn't I do this?
Right.
They're really passionate about the organization. Or, a lot of people that get cards are founders of small nonprofits where, they're looking for every way to help their organization. And they'll get a card themselves, and they'll also recruit, close friends and family members, letting them know that this is an easy opportunity to help out. So I think it's more about, I look at our user base as being of those types of people versus like what age, et cetera, they are. But if I had to give you an honest assessment, it's generally speaking, people above probably 35 and up, I think have a little bit of extra disposable income, are looking for ways to give back, in enhanced ways to something that they're probably already contributing to.
Interesting. I would have actually thought it was young people at first, because that seems to be the kind of the millennial generation seems to be a little bit more nonprofit focused and less consumerism. But that's interesting. I guess you're right. If people are looking to add an extra card to the wallet, it would be a little bit older with more expendable income. What about your profit? So you aren't a nonprofit. You're a for-profit organization. How do you make your profit?
Correct. So we're a public benefit corporation, and we make our profit in two key ways, which is not overly dissimilar to when I was mentioning earlier on, how the co-brand business model works. When you think of like a Southwest Airlines or a Nordstrom's, they have these credit card programs, in partnership with a payment network and a bank issuer, just like we do. So we are paid totally separate from the 1% cash back that the cardholders earned. Commerce Bank and MasterCard pay charity charge a total dollar amount as we grow the business. So on a really practical level, Commerce Bank pays us a fixed dollar amount anytime someone signs up for the card. And then MasterCard pays us a royalty on the overall volume and usage. And that's, the same way that they would pay a Southwest Airlines or a Nordstrom's.
Okay. And, I'm interested because you had these really positive projections when you first submitted your materials to MasterCard. How difficult have you found it since then to get people to sign up? What has been your biggest challenge so far, and what surprised you the most?
Yeah, I think that our biggest challenge has been the fact that there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of competition, generally speaking, for mind share around credit cards. When we go to partner with sites like a creditcards.com or a QuinStreet or a NerdWallet or the Points Guy or Compare Cards or any of these sites, they're typically getting, significantly more than our margins afford for us to be able to pay to get to the top of their lists. To be frank, it's been super competitive getting out there. That's in part why, we've really grown through partnerships with the nonprofits and just figuring out the right way to message it to founders of nonprofits that can recruit, friends and family to get cards. I think I would be remiss, we focused the bulk of this conversation on, our consumer card, but where I'm really excited, where we're taking the business is we have it in market and have a lot of nonprofits using it, but is our nonprofit business card, where the nonprofit uses it for their internal expenses. Just to paint the picture, for example, 1% for the Planet, Patagonia's sister nonprofit, their 10 employees all use a nonprofit business card to make purchases, and then it funds themselves. And, that's been in the works for almost 2 years, just a lot of legal and operational things that I had to work through with our bank partner and MasterCard to bring that product to market. But I think as an entrepreneur, and I think that's part of what this podcast is about, and just kind of letting you know kind of where we're at, I'm really excited about that market because we're going to be doing something that's hyper unique in the sense of, it's fulfilling our mission to serve nonprofits, and it's a very focused, essentially B2B offering where we can go direct to the nonprofit and bring them value for something for them to use internally. The consumer credit card space is very challenging. Although we're finding ways to grow, it's really tough because, you talk about like, the big banks are hiring, Samuel L. Jackson or Tina Fey or Jennifer Garner and running,
right.
National advertising. I really need platforms like this, like you and this podcast and the story you're doing on us really help, bring awareness in a very organic, grassroots way. And that's really how I believe we're gonna grow this thing. And that's part
Have
of.
You found,
yep.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, that's part of, I don't know if, how part of it is like, I'm just recording even some videos as I'm talking about this, because I'm like, hey, this is a great clip that could go up on YouTube or something. And I'm hoping that someone out there hears it and, tells it to their nonprofit or tells it to their friend or decides, hey, I want to get a card and give back.
Absolutely. And, I'm curious how the 1% might harm you guys in your efforts, or maybe it helps you. But I know that, a lot of cards now you can get 1.5% to 2% back with cards. So do people say, well, wait a second, why don't I just get a 1.5% cash back card and then donate that to the charity of my choice? Or, if a business wants to get that card, they say, well, I'd rather get a card that will give us 2% back in something rather than 1%, even if it's giving to a nonprofit. How do you guys contend with that? And do you have plans to get it raised to 1.5% to be a little bit more competitive?
So the brief answer is yes, we do. I mean,
okay.
we're starting small. And when we started, MasterCard and our bank partner wanted to do the program, but they didn't want to take a loss on it. And so, right. Banks, when they put together new credit card offerings, they obviously have very sophisticated business models of how they're going to make money on the program, which helps them decide, where they're going to put those rewards. So I'll make a couple of comments on this because I think actually, if there's a soapbox I can stand on or a message that I can kind of put out there, I think this is really kind of where the meat of this conversation goes. So number one, yes, we will, as our user base grows, and that's why we need people, we will be able to justify and get more beyond the 1% to go back to charity. Two, we underwrite all the donation processing fees out of the margins that we get paid from MasterCard so that 100% goes automatically with no breakage, which gets me to my point. The reason that a bank can offer, 1.5% on these categories and potentially even like a 2% on these categories type of card is that, a bank at the end of the day, they need to make money. They're all about maximizing profit. And in many respects, I compare them to like a casino. The house always wins. So they know that if they're going to launch a credit card and they're going to offer, 2% on these categories and 1% on everything else, they know a couple of things. One, that it's going to net out to only be in actuality what they're paying out when it averages out between the categories. Let's say like instead of 2% or 1%, it's probably going to be like a 1.2%, 1.3% in actuality of the cash back that's generated. They also know we don't get these types of profits for our program, but they know that they're going to put out a card and a percent of that portfolio is going to get hit with late payment fees, interest, financing charges, etc., which is going to more than make up for the super high end of the spectrum of people that are their power users that are getting 2% extra points, all that stuff, and essentially. At the end of the day, when people, want to brag about the flights that they're going on and the vacations they get to take, it's on the backs of the other end of the credit card program of the people that weren't able to pay their bill, that are barely able to make ends meet, that are paying super high finance charges, that are able to make that program profitable so the bank can afford to reward, those power users with all of those perks and benefits. And then the last, I'll just say this, gets to the breakage point. Again, 31% of credit card holders in the United States never redeem their reward points. So coming full circle to how I had the epiphany and came up with this idea, a bank knows that when they put out a new credit card, they're going to, hire Samuel L. Jackson and they're going to make all these marketing statements, but they know that a percent of that portfolio, a large percent, is never going to redeem the reward points. And that breakage is going to go right back to their bottom line and allow them to become profitable.
Very interesting. And so you're saying basically this is a thing where it is 100% the rewards will be used because they are donated, automatically by you guys every time somebody uses their card. So there isn't that breakage there that they would experience normally with people just not redeeming their rewards at all. And that at the end of the day, though, is your APR pretty low? I mean, one thing somebody might say is, hey, do I really want to get a card where, okay, I'm not getting the rewards and I'm giving it to somebody else, that's great, but I don't want to be hit with tons of interest payments if I forget to pay.
Correct. So our APR is lower than the national average. And I do think to answer your question as well, I mean, I think that you're on spot. I mean, the people that are getting our card are looking for something that's different. They like the fact that there's no annual fee, so there's no cost to them, and they get the benefit of the tax write-off, and they get to feel good.
I'm curious how the tax write-off works. I'm sorry, really quickly, because I know with credit cards generally, like if you get rewards, let's say I get $2,000 worth of free flights rewards, I don't have to declare that on my taxes because it's kind of a separate type of thing. It's not considered taxable. So how do you use your rewards as a tax write-off?
Sure. So this took me a lot of agony and expense hiring one of the top tax attorneys and law firms in the country. So here it is. Essentially, any reward that you earn with a credit card, whether it's cash back or it's bonus points or it's airline miles, is technically a rebate on the purchase price. Right. So therefore, as the consumer or the small business owner or the business, that's essentially a discount to you and does not count as income. The IRS does not, make you have to, kind of claim that, so to speak, as income. Sure. On the flip side, what we're doing, it's essentially, if you look at our cardholder agreement, our terms of service, what we're doing is essentially automating the donation of people's cash back to the charities that they had pre-selected. So in the way that kind of money is fungible, someone uses a charity charge card, let's say they make a $100 purchase. Well, they've technically earned 1% cash back, so they've earned $1. Right. Instead of us just automatically depositing that in their bank account, we're instead automatically depositing that in the nonprofit that they had pre-selected. Thus, they're directing the cash back, which makes it tax deductible.
Wow, that's very, very interesting because, it would not be considered taxable income if you got that cash back from the card, as far as I understand. So for it to then be redirected to a nonprofit for you to be able to get the tax break on that, that's very interesting work you did there, Stephen. Good job.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. I mean, it took a lot. The flip side also, though, for to kind of compare what's going on and how we're different, when you have a large nonprofit that partners direct with a bank, in the case of Susan G. Komen and Bank of America, it's Bank of America making a bulk donation to Susan G. Komen. So those cardholders don't get that benefit of it.
Very interesting, but you were able to manage to make this so that cardholders could get the benefit, which is another perk. You're not just giving back, but you're giving back, and you get to write it off on your taxes too. So that's definitely, depending on how you use that card or how much you use that card, that can be significant. Let's say somebody says, okay, this is great, and I love the idea. Maybe in the future I'll get a new credit card, but that's not what I'm interested in right now. What are some other ways that people can give back, kind of using their credit card rewards, that's not necessarily having to sign up for a new card?
So depending on your bank issuer, I mean, some of them let you convert points into donations. I think that the only other really way, I know you, this part you might have to edit out. I don't really know other options, honestly. I don't really think, specifically for a credit card, I know of plenty of other ways people can get involved and give back, but I don't really see any good options out there other than what we're doing.
Well, I know
because it's very limited.
You can donate your points, let's say, to the American Red Cross, your points for flights. So you're providing flights for people who, volunteers who need to get out there in the times of an emergency. You can donate your cash back. Obviously, you just get the cash back. Whatever you got back, you can donate it to a charity or a nonprofit of your choice. So there are other ways to help out with your credit card, but yours at least is seamless in the sense that once you pick your charity, it's done. You never have to think about it again or do anything more with it again, which I think is a very big kind of perk for people who say, the reality has it, I have all these grand ideas of what I'm going to be doing, maybe to give back or whatever, but I just never get around to it. So this is a great way to do that without having to worry about how to get around to it. Does it, if you don't mind telling me, how many users do you guys have now?
Yeah, so I'm really proud. We have cardholders in every state across the country, and we've gone over 1,200 consumer cardholders now and growing. Really started to pick up actually pretty significantly over the past 3 weeks, which has been awesome as well.
Absolutely. Fantastic. That's great. And, you guys plan to keep growing. Do you have a timeline as far as how you're now going to move into the business card category? What's kind of your 5-year outlook?
Boy, that's a big question to ask. I'm really excited that I can only answer it in more kind of over the next 6 months right now. In the early to mid-summer, we're going to make a formal announcement and launch of our nonprofit business card. And then time in the late summer, early fall, we'll formally launch our business card product. And for me, that's really very much solidifying like the vision of having these 3 different products: a consumer card, a nonprofit card, and a business card. Mm-hmm. I think from there, really where I'm just trying to focus more of my time. I just left a conference with a group that we work with, 1% for the Planet, and was just so inspired by all the people that are a part of it. And I'm really just trying to get back to our roots of connecting with our nonprofits and our cardholders and businesses to just grow as much organically as a movement with this thing. I think,
and take it day by day.
It's part of the day by day. I think on the other side, you think about like a 5-year, a 10-year, a 15, a 20-year. I think that it gets back to the roots to really that concept of reminding people that giving is better than receiving. I think we have an opportunity to make a consciousness shift and a mindset shift, in this country and beyond, that we are so fortunate to have what we have, especially in this country. And if I can make a mark of changing not only like the credit cards that people use, put that to the side. That's not the important thing. It's just like bringing a little bit more joy and positivity to people's lives, bringing that karma back to them. That's really why I'm doing this. I really think we've got an opportunity to bring people together and do it in a way that's all about in the service of others and not just about ourselves.
Absolutely. And it's nice when it's something that is easy to do, and it's pretty simple. You're going to sign up for a card anyway. You might as well get one that makes you feel good every time you buy something. Finally, our show is called Charged Up. What gets you charged up about changing the mindset that we have around credit cards?
What gets me charged up are 2 things. Number one is that I think that there's I think something that we can all agree with is that there's an unbelievable lack of financial literacy that happens. And, before our time, almost before we were all born, this credit card industry started. And, it's always been in a profit maximization standpoint. And I'm just proud that I'm creating a platform where I can talk about, breakage and what's happening behind the scenes with credit cards and how people can do something positive. Because again, whether you want to call it for right or wrong, the legal definition of a corporation and what these banks are they're there to maximize profits for shareholders. So you can look at, what a Wells Fargo has done to rip off consumers. You can look at what so many of these other banks have done through the housing mortgage crisis that we've, come out of. So just trying to do something positive. I think on the micro sense, I can't tell you, Jenny, how excited I get when, we're launching a new partnership with a nonprofit, or last week we had, 2 organizations in particular. One was a nonprofit in Austin called Friends of the Children that reached out, that wanted our business card. And it brought me so much joy to be able to serve them, to be able to offer them this card that I know that's going to help them. And because, the small to medium-sized nonprofits is, quote, a small industry in the terms of how a big bank would look at it, they've really been left unaddressed and just out there kind of defend for themselves. So I'm just charged up to be able to do something unique in this space and be able to help these nonprofits. That was the highlight of my week last week, was when that nonprofit reached out and they said, hey, do you have a business card? How could we use it? Could we fund ourselves? And the answer fortunately was absolutely. And, we've got them on their way. So I'm just here to serve nonprofits and really help people, give back in a super easy way. And my audacity is that, over time we can create a mindset and a consciousness shift of, people being more positive, more friendly, more giving to those that are less fortunate than themselves.
That's amazing. And I think it's so impressive what you've done. It's impressive that you got this even started from an idea and you launched it and you are so fired up about it. I've met you in person. You really, really believe in the mission. And, I think that is really, really admirable. And, congratulations on doing that. And I encourage people, if you do want to give back and you don't want to, you're just not going to ever get around to putting a lot of effort into it, but you still want to do it, this is a great option. Charity Charge is an awesome option. You can get it off of creditcards.com. You can get it off of charitycharge.com. So, I highly encourage people to check it out. Or if you run a nonprofit, you'd say, hey, absolutely, I want to send this out to my list of people who support us. So thank you so much, Stephen. Great conversation. We also did a video with you guys just because I think it's such an awesome thing that you're doing. So that'll be out on creditcards.com also. So thank you so much, Stephen.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jenny.
Great job. I think that went really well. And yeah, we'll edit out that part where you didn't know the answer. That's totally fine. I didn't give you the heads up that I was going to ask that. So that's totally fine. But I think it went really well.
I think it did too. Yeah, no worries. Sorry that I got to tell you, I really haven't focused on, I don't know. That's why I'm actually really excited to see your piece because I don't know of all these options. Other ways. I know there's limited ways and there are ways that you can use it.
Right. It's just that, and the fact is what makes you guys very unique is that it's set and it's done, right? You just don't have to think about it anymore. With every other kind of rewards, redemption, even donating your stuff, you have to then go in, get your points, figure out how to send them over, all that kind of stuff. And so it is nice to have something that's just set and it's done and all you have to do is buy your stuff. You don't have to do anything else. That's amazing. Congratulations. And so we will, if you wanted to meet up to chat sometime, I can